I think we're going to do it. No, I think so much excitement. So a little after 5 after, we're going to give them about 4 more minutes. But people are still coming, we're still adding chairs. And so we'll give it another 4 minutes. So last call for everybody. Did you get all your handouts? Because that's so important in the presentation. So if you don't have your handouts from over there, please go get them now. And the door prize, is there anybody here that has not gotten their door prize ticket? Some good items. Really memorable door prizes. Okay. Okay, folks, we're going to start in just about 30 seconds, so please take your seats. Please, everybody take your seats so we can get started. And thank you all for coming. Wow. We're glad that it's a great turnout, but this is amazing. I think this is a lot more than we expected. And we're so pleased to see you all, and so welcome. I'm just going to try to figure out what's the right level for this. And let me introduce my name. My name is Charlie Shadd, and I've been with the Next Steps group for the past 1.5 years. And all the other individuals here have been on the same team for the past 1.5 years. And we're all going to introduce ourselves in a couple of minutes. And I want to make sure that everybody has the handouts from over there. If anybody doesn't, there's a last chance to get them. So I'll take just a second if anybody needs to do that. The things you need most of all is the 2 that say what we did and didn't do and learning. Because that's really the meat of our presentation today.
What we have done and what we have.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and you know what? In important auditoriums and theaters all around, they please ask if you turn off your cell phone during the performance. So, if you can do that, we appreciate it. Okay, so let's get started. The Next Step group has been meeting monthly since January 2017. And we have been working to confront the issues and realities and challenges of aging. And more specifically, we all wanted to remain in our own homes, but we needed to understand better what to do. And a lot of the individual actions and steps that we need to do to accomplish that, and how to get the support that we need from family, friends, neighbors, Ashby Village, and various professional services. And we also realize that some of us may have to move or may want to move to a senior residence at some point for health reasons or other reasons. So we've also looked at that. So we've looked at both sides of the equation, staying at home and moving. The main focus of what we're going to share with you today is contained in the 2 handouts that I just mentioned. The handouts are the learnings and what we have done. And we're going to go through those in more detail later on. The presentation is more of an overview than a drill down with a lot of details. And we're going to have some detailed presentations and then your questions. And the questions will get us to the details that interest all of you. You're all here because you're already thinking about this and concerned about it or working on it in some way. So you all have different questions. And that's what we really want to focus. That's the main, most important part of this presentation. We hope we can answer most of the questions, but I just want to caution you, maybe not all of them, because there's a huge amount of material, and we're going to try to capture all of the questions that are asked, and after the fact, we're going to try to send out that list and answers that we may generate here in the meeting or after the fact. So there'll be some follow-up there. I want to break away from the agenda for a couple of minutes now, because you all have an agenda, but there's two or three things that I want to touch base on really quickly. I want to do some introductions that are specific for right now. One is I want to introduce Glenna Breslin, who's sitting here in the front table. Glenna was an original member of our group, and today she's sitting here with us, and we're glad. We haven't seen her in about 6 months, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And we're very glad that she could come. She moved to a senior residence community earlier this year and hasn't been active with us since that time. But last year, Glenna worked harder than anybody in the group on the stay-at-home versus move issue. And she's really a model for anybody who's working on these kinds of things. And we're very glad that she got through that and made a decision, which I hope you feel is a good decision.
I do.
Good, all right. And so, you know, if we were a baseball team, I guess Glenna would be candidate for most inspirational player. She probably did more work than all of us, the rest of us combined. Secondly, I want to introduce Andy Gaines, who really doesn't need an introduction. Andy is the executive director of Ashby Village, as you all know. And Ashby Village and Cal are rolling out a new venture regarding housing, which fits just beautifully with this meeting today. So Andy gets a chance to give you the first heads up and a little bit of information about it.
Thanks, Charlie. It's lovely to look around and know so many of you. So I just want to share a new initiative that has been launched, grew out of a recognition of community needs and opportunities. So UC Berkeley Retirement Center and Ashby Village are the lead partners in a new home match initiative. And what the initiative is attempting to do is, in the next year, we just received initial grant money from UC Berkeley Chancellor's Community Fund to match 6 seniors who have their own homes and are looking for some additional income or some additional company with graduate students from UC Berkeley. And the particular challenge or our particular desire is to look at what makes these successful. What helps to make people who own their own homes, who are thinking about maybe either needing some money or wanting some a renter, to feel comfortable and ready to make that step. And we have an intern half-time that's going to be working with us for the year. We have one of our volunteers, Ashby Village volunteers, Melissa, who we just spoke with, who's going to be heading up kind of working with our community, both UC Berkeley retirees and Ashby Village members who might be interested in being part of this initiative. So I want to encourage any of you who might be thinking about that to be in touch with me and let me know your interest. We're beginning to gather names, and we'll be letting you know along the way about the initiative. But it's just one of the possibilities that might help you to continue living in your own homes. So have a great talk. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you. And that sounds exciting and good for everybody in Ashby Village. And I have to tell you, I'm having a little problem adjusting to the mic. I had to be honest, I sat down with this and I had so many thoughts in my head and there's so much material to cover that I ended up deciding I had to script this entirely, because otherwise I'd start talking and you'd be here all day. And you probably wouldn't have liked that. So I basically wrote a kind of a tight script, and I'm going to try to stick to it to keep things on track. But with the mic, I'm down, I'm up. I'm adjusting to that, so bear with me, please. The last introduction I want to make, or the last comment I want to make, is I just want to take a moment for our group to remember Barbara Bull. She was one of our original members. She died unexpectedly in the spring. She was a wonderful person. She contributed a lot to our group, and she had great dignity and strength, and we miss her, and we just want to remember her in front of all of you because she would have been here, and she would have liked to have been here. Now, we're going to move on to self-introductions, and what we're going to talk about here is basically everybody saying who they are and kind of why they're here. I hope that that's what you all are planning to do. Is that right? Good, okay. Oh, I'm going to go last. I have a reason. It's scripted.
All right, my name is Virginia. I was in the middle of, in an emergency situation, finding senior living arrangements for an elderly aunt in New York when Charlie said, I'm going to form this group, and I said, you know, I should know what my options are to stay in my own home or where I would want to move to before an emergency. And so that's why I joined the group.
And Glenna, you didn't have any preparation, so you can pass it on if you want.
Okay, I'm Carol Takaki, and to be honest, when Charlie formed the group, I just wanted to be part of the group and to support Charlie. But it really has made me think about what my options are and my responsibilities are for my future.
I'm Mary Jo Bell. I have lived in my house now for 18 years only. I'm not a long-time resident, but I picked my house out for the view, and I don't want to leave it, and I've always thought I would stay in it. And somebody said Charlie started the group. Charlie showed up at a lunch one day and said, who wants to do this? And there we all are. And I have to say, we couldn't have had a better leader.
Amen.
Yeah, right.
Hi, I'm Tanya. And I joined because I was fairly new with the village and I wanted to make new friends, and I really have no clue what I'm doing either. I'm like Charlie, I don't have family, I don't have anybody really to rely on pretty much. And I live down in the Flats in Albany, and my house is just so well lit and so bright and cheery, I don't want to leave it, but it's full of stairs. So I don't know, I just don't know. So I got involved here, and things are still open, and I'll tell you more later. Bye.
Hi, I'm Liz Ryan, and can you hear me?
Closer.
Okay. I'm Liz Ryan, and I joined because I lost my husband 5 years ago, and I'm living alone, and I have lots of kids, but not one of them lives anywhere near me, and I can't stop thinking about what will happen if I get sick and how will I cope, because I don't want to leave my home. I've already made the big move to a smaller house when my husband was sick, and I love my new house that I've been in for 10 years now, so that's my new house, and I really don't want to leave it. But I think, God, what if I break a leg? What if this? What if that? And so I joined to think about what are the alternatives. And here I am. We'll see what happens.
And Glenna, if you want to say something? If you want.
I'm Glenna Breslin. I moved to Berkeley in '64, the year of the free speech movement. And I've lived in 3 different houses in Berkeley. The one I sold recently is this neighborhood, a small house. I could have stayed there. I know I could have. But I was interested in the topic, and I had never visited a senior living place. And I went to 4 or 5 with this group, and on my own, revisited 2 of those and saw one more with a woman whose profession is helping seniors find the right place. And so it was during that period that I was able to decide that I would be happier with fewer responsibilities as a homeowner and a homemaker, and I'm very happy where I am now. I moved to Piedmont Gardens in January. Celebrated my 80th birthday there. So it's been a good move.
Thank you. Okay, I'll do my introduction in a second. Just a little bit more perspective, and then we'll get into the meat. So over the past year and a half, we've met with a lot of professionals and experts, and we've amassed a lot of information, and we couldn't possibly share all of that with you today, even if we wanted to. We would like to, but it's just too much. So what we're going to do today is to share some of what we have learned, enough to give you the flavor of the work, which, by the way, is still very much in progress. A really important thing we want to emphasize is that we're not bringing in or offering solutions. We don't believe there are off-the-shelf answers to these questions because everybody's different. There's a kind of a standard list of issues, but not of solutions. Everybody has their own package of needs and priorities and fears and aspirations. So that's where the answer has to come from. That's where your questions come from, and that's where your answers come from. So we just want to encourage everybody to continue the work that you've obviously already started, and we're going to try to help a little bit with that. So I haven't done my self-introduction. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to use it in a way to use myself as kind of an example. My reason for being involved in the group is that I live alone. Like Tanya said, I don't have any family that's likely to step in when I get to the point that I can't function independently. So that's worrisome. And it's the #1 issue for me. Also, I'm healthy as far as I know. And that's good for now. But I also have a little story I got to tell you. So Glenn is in Piedmont Gardens. So I went to Piedmont Gardens. I said, guys, I'd like to talk to you and find out a little bit more about what it takes to get in here. And they said, well, come on down and bring some financial information and we'll tell you. So I came down, talked to the assistant marketing manager, and gave her some of the information. She went over the computer, entered some stuff, turned around and said, you're going to live to be 13.2 years more. I said, thank you. So, but she thought that was good, because she thought that that meant that I could afford to live in their place. And so far as I know, at this stage, it's down to 13.1 years now. But anyway, apparently I look pretty good to them right now, but you don't know. I mean, next month, maybe everything changes. So I got a kick out of that. Anyway, I just as soon not know. In any case, the last major issue for me is that I really like the life that I'm leading right now. I have a good life living at home. I can't quite envision this going on forever because I'm a very outdoorsy person and I won't be able to do some of that stuff forever, although I see people out in Tilden that are well into their 90s and blind, and they're hiking. And that's great, and I hope I can do that. But at the moment, I don't know. So really, I guess the thing is that I don't want to give up the life I've got now any sooner than I have to. And I don't think any of you do either, do you? But that's the hard thing about it. When to move. Some of you will not have to move. Some of you will move. You'll have to, or you'll want to. It'll be the right thing to do. And I haven't gotten to that point, but knowing when is really the hard part of all of this. And I don't have a quick, easy answer for you on that, but I think that that's something that we're going to be sharing more on later on. We do know I think all of us have stories about people who have waited too long. And they lost control of the decisions and the power to carry out those decisions about their life, where to live and how to live, because they waited too long. And I'm going to give you a short story. With me, you get two stories. This is about my Aunt Helen, my mother's younger sister. And her life was very much like mine. She lived in San Diego. Her husband died. And she didn't have as many friends there, but she was a very independent, outgoing person. She had a social life, and she lived a very good life into her early 80s in an apartment of her own. But she didn't do any planning. And so when she had her stroke, she lay on the floor in her apartment for 3 days. And she never recovered from that. If she had been able to if she had had a medical alert device, or if she had had somebody checking on her and she could have gotten care quickly, she probably could have had a pretty decent life for a while longer. But the end of her life was just terrible. And that's always been in my mind, and that's a big part of what got me started in this. I don't want that to happen. So whatever I can do now, that's what I want to do. So in any case, my profile then suggests that the issues that I needed to work on were, one, fiduciaries, people to take care of my affairs. If one of my relatives steps forward, great, but I need to have something in place. Another thing is a medical alert or other, warning devices, and a support network that's checking on me at a certain point. Another issue would be senior housing. I need to really look into that. It's incredibly complicated. And that could be something that we could talk about for hours today, and then have another meeting next week and talk about for hours, and on and on and on. It's really a major topic. We're going to have some more information coming out on that, but we're going to share a lot today. So that is, that's pretty much the rest of what I want to say about my introduction. So we're ready to move on. We want the rest of the session to be very interactive. As I said, we'll do our best to answer your questions, but keep in mind that we got our information by going to experts. And we think that that's the thing to do, is to go to experts. We are not presenting ourselves to you as the experts. We have learned a lot, and we have some good stuff to share. And we even have some stuff to share that the experts probably won't share with you. We're going to do that when they leave the room. But for the time being, I think that's something that's really important. Work with really good people, and there's a lot of them around. And there's some of them today, and we're going to introduce them all pretty shortly. So, let's see. What else? Well, let's get going then. It does take a lot of time and effort to organize all this material, so when I say we've got more material coming, don't hold your breath. It's not coming next week. So now we're going to turn to the mini presentations. The fact that you're here today, again, as I said, says you're already thinking about this, already working on it, and that you have questions. And in fact, questions are not only encouraged, but they're required. So the presenters may want you to save your questions to the end, or they may take them as they come. They'll tell you how they want to handle it. We're going to start with Carol.
Okay, I'm going to try and do it without the microphone. I am a teacher, English teacher, and I understand my voice is very loud. Okay, so my assignment today is to talk about how important it is to have your legal documentation in place and regularly updated. You may think that this just means you decide who inherits your estate. But getting your affairs in order also means providing for who is legally empowered to make health and legal decisions on your behalf if you are temporarily or permanently disabled. So I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. Several months ago, my daughter-in-law, Warner, first name is Warner, received a phone call from a hospital in Chicago. She's in Los Angeles, and her dad is in Chicago. Her father, John, had fallen down the stairs a few days earlier, but hadn't wanted to bother her. But now he was confused, and the doctors wanted permission to operate. Warner was on the next plane to Chicago. Up until then, Warner felt she couldn't talk to John about his next steps. It was too awkward. John was too private. There was no talk about a health directive, or power of attorney, or even a will. Actually, John had made a health directive with a friend, but the friend had died about a year before that. When she got to Chicago, Warner was at a loss. Actually, she contacted me about what I had learned in next steps. And the social worker at the hospital and the rehab center were also very helpful. Really, you need to have a talk with your family. If you don't have a family member to count on, consider a fiduciary. First of all, you need to have a will and maybe a trust, a durable power of attorney, and a health directive. I had all these three things, but I found that the executor of my trust and the person designated as power of attorney and health director should all be the same person. I had chosen one of my 3 kids for each of these tasks. If you already have these documents, have someone check them over from time to time. Make sure that whomever you have chosen understands their responsibilities and your wishes. If you don't have someone you feel comfortable with for your next steps, consider a fiduciary. Now, I had no idea what a fiduciary was. I know my brother had one, but I didn't know what that meant. This is a trained and licensed professional that can help you manage your finances and even help you transition into a care facility to pay your bills, all of those things. You can also consult Nova Chavez, who is with us today. She's an elder law specialist and an Ashby Village volunteer. I did. Don't be a John. Don't wait until you're forced to prepare for your next steps. John and I were both in LA for Christmas. He is frail and still needs help, but his mind is sharp. He and Warner are closer together, and she is still calling me for information I have learned from next steps. Do you have any questions? Yes?
You said that the healthcare and the power of attorney should be both the same person?
Yes.
Why is that?
You know why? I'm not sure why.
There's no,
Mom?
I'm here.
Why?
Actually, it's the trustee and the agent under their power of attorney that's helpful if they're the same person. The advanced healthcare directive is a little bit different. It's a more personal decision, and you might want someone else to do that. But when you're choosing people to be your agent, you have to consider what they're going to be doing. If somebody's good for financial things, make them your successor trustee and your agent under your DPOA. If someone's better equipped to handle emotional situations, like when you're in the hospital and you have to have a decision made about your health care, that can be someone you think that can handle those kind of decisions.
Okay, thanks.
Point of order, please. As your volunteer videographer and recorder, it really, really helps, A, to use the microphone, at least up at the front desk. B, it helps to have that question repeated. And C, for those of you who are giving wonderful information like you just gave, if you could speak up, the recording of that will work. We don't have any outside mics around here, so if you can really speak up to give your wonderful advice, then the people who are going to be seeing these videos after this is all over will have an opportunity to benefit. Thank you.
Good for you. I'm not sure how we get the microphone out. Do we have a volunteer that can help us with this?
It's going to be really, really difficult to pass it back and forth. So I don't know if it works.
I think they just, you repeat the question.
Yeah.
people out there,
Right, okay.
no, I think the people out there need to.
Yeah, that was my
I think
understanding.
that's what you meant. People out there need to use
the microphone.
No, I think
both.
we need to use the microphone up here.
Pardon?
We need to have the microphone up here, but
They can return it.
repeat the question.
Okay, well, if we can't have the microphone in two places.
It can't be going back and forth. It's gonna slow it down.
Okay. Yes?
My question is that I have people, friends. I don't have family. So I have friends designated for these various, for the executor, power of attorney, etc. But my fear, and they're my age.
Yeah.
So my fear is that by the time I need this, they're going to be senile also.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a serious thing. And so other than having a fiduciary, how does one deal with this?
Well, the question is, if you have somebody and it's like your same age, they're going to grow up with you, grow old with you. My answer to that is the same thing with Don, his friend Don, is that you keep updating them, and you get, I'm sure you'll have friends that are younger than you at some point, and make sure that you have somebody who's viable all along the way. Nola, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, that's...
Nola, could you come in front when you're talking so we could share your voice?
Why don't you sit here, so long as we're doing the law? Oh, let's have a lawyer seat.
I have to say that's come up in my law office a lot recently. Because a lot of our clients are, seniors, and they've lost their friends, and some of them don't have family. And I contacted a fiduciary that I think came to speak to you before. Was Jennifer Keystone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I contacted her yesterday, in fact, because I have that problem right now. And I asked her if she knew of any younger fiduciaries that I knew, pretty much knew that would be around when we needed them. And she provided me with a list. So I have a list now of about 4 or 5 fiduciaries that are, younger, that can fulfill that function. Because that is a problem. A lot of your experienced fiduciaries are about your age, so, they might not be around. And there's also...
Give us your last name, too.
Pardon me?
Give us your name of your practice and your last name.
Oh, it's on one of the handouts. My name is Nola Chavez, and it's on one of the handouts. But I'll put my cards out there if you'd like.
Thank you.
Another thing is, in your trust document, if you already have a trust, it's really important for there to be a provision for how a successor trustee is chosen. Because you might name 2 or 3 people and none of them are around or willing to do it or whatever. And if there's not a provision for how a successor is chosen, your personal representative will have to go to court, and it's a big mess. I've done that too. So it's always important to have a successor provision. And what we normally do if someone has a professional fiduciary and that fiduciary is no longer in practice or has passed away or whatever, then it goes to the president of the Professional Fiduciary Association of Northern California, and that person chooses a fiduciary to take the place. And so you'll always have a provision, and you don't have to worry about going to court, or your relatives will have to.
Okay. Thank you. There's more questions?
Okay. I don't know who was first, so let's start at the back of the room.
Thanks. I believe there's a difference between durable power of attorney for health care and durable power of attorney for what I think of as finances or personal property. And since I heard this through some other advisors, I wonder, is that true? Because you talked earlier about durable power of attorney, but were you speaking about finances or health care? Could you explain the
Okay,
difference?
what I understand, durable power of attorney is finances. The other one is called a health directive. Am I right?
Yeah, it used to be called durable power of attorney for health care, but now they're more likely to be called advanced health care directives.
Okay, because it used to be, I found that confusing. Okay.
Okay, did everybody understand the question about what is the difference between durable power of attorney and a health directive? There's 2 different things, and they can be 2 different people if that's what you wish. Another question right here in the gray shirt.
I'm still not clear about what a fiduciary does.
A fiduciary, what's a fiduciary? What do they do? From what I'm told, they really take over and take care of all of your financial needs, but can also help you move into a facility if that's what you need to do, pay your bills, and so forth. So fiduciary is usually somebody, if you have nobody else either in your family or nobody else that you think is appropriate, even if you do have family. And it's a paid professional. Yes?
Well, I'm wondering, my children are out of state.
Yeah.
And they are the ones listed in all these positions. Is it better to have a local fiduciary than have the children listed?
It's amazing how fast they can get here, though.
Yeah, but they have lives, you know.
They have lives, okay. The question is, what if you have no children who live nearby? Okay, now what would you say?
Well, that's one of the things that you work out. That's not a question we can probably answer here. I think you have to kind of figure out what the trade-offs are. So I'm going to just...
Personal preference.
Yeah, it's a personal...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I've been to many meetings, and I often hear them say, the best is coming last, and we never get to last, and I get very anxious. So I'm wondering if you have set aside time at the end of this presentation for our last questions, like the last 15 or 20 minutes.
Well, we're going to keep track of time. We're good right now. So we'll just go, if it looks like we're running into a time crunch, then we're going to have to kind of cut some things.
Okay, so one more question on finances. Yes?
What's the average cost of a fiduciary?
Oh, I can't answer that one. What is the cost of a fiduciary?
Oh, the cost varies. I think right now they're charging around $120 an hour.
120 an hour, but it varies.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should move on to the next presentation. You can still ask questions, and Nola's going to stick around, and she can answer more detailed questions. Okay, who's next?
Mary Jo.
Mary Jo is next.
Okay, I'm going to use the mic because I'm not a teacher, I'm a nurse, and nurses speak softly.
Really?
You didn't know that. Anyway, basically I'm going to talk about providing healthcare provision at home. How many of you, I'm asking questions, I'm going to ask some questions for a while. How many of you have ever needed to have somebody come to your home and help you with personal care and activities of daily living? More than I thought. Were those private? Did you hire them privately or did they come from a company?
Company.
Private company. Okay.
Both.
Both. You've had both. Okay. How many of you think that you might someday in the future need to have this kind of person? Well, that's honest. Okay. In the course of our investigations, it became very apparent that this is something we needed to look at. That, if we continue to live, and we continue to live at home, and don't go to some place that provides assisted living, which Virginia's going to talk about, you're going to need somebody to come at some point, probably. Not everybody does, but a lot of people will. Need somebody to come and do personal care and activities of daily living. I keep saying activities of daily living. That's the thing like taking a shower, putting on your clothes, putting on your shoes, cooking, eating, all those things that you do every day and don't even think much about. When you can't do them, then you have to think about it. So there are a couple ways to get this. One way to do it is to know somebody that has somebody that is very, very good at doing this. And that somebody has some time that they can work with you. That's a very good way to go. Not everybody knows somebody, and I know two people right now that have a private pay person that they think very highly of. If you want to do that, that's great. If you find the resources, you still need to do your own interviewing your own, getting references, and you need to have a clear understanding with this person about what it is they will do and what you expect of them and what they expect of you. Because if they don't do what they said they would do, you are the supervisor. You have nobody to fall back on. You can't point at somebody and say, well, Susie didn't do that, and I need to have that done. It's up to you. The other thing is they may be able to do tasks that if you hire somebody through a company, they can't do. Usually the people that come through a company can't give medications. They can't do wound care. They can only do what we would think of as nurses' aides duty. Whereas if you hire your private person, they may be able to do this, particularly with a little instruction. The other thing is that if you have long-term care insurance, it may not cover someone who is not hired through a company. You'd have to check your long-term care insurance. My long-term care insurance will cover training somebody, which generally some questions in my mind, well, how do we do this? Anyway, the other way to go is through a company. There are lots of companies out there. They vary from companies that are licensed by the Department of Health Services or the Department of Social Services, or companies that somebody sits at a desk with a list, and when they get a call, they call a person and have them come to your house. And then they pay them. The pay goes through that person. Obviously, there's a big difference there. It's all a range in between. I can tell you that I Googled, when I started doing this, I Googled personal care at home, and within 15 minutes I got a call from somebody in Concord who would have sent me somebody tomorrow. So I wouldn't have wanted that person because I had a feeling that he would call somebody closer to my house that he had on his list, and that person would come and there would be no supervision. So anyway, what I finally came up with, the good news, before I get there, the good news is that Ashby Village does have a vetted list. I think Hilda probably put it together, Hilda, our social worker, who is right there. I think Hilda put it together. It's a good list. I checked most of those places. And if I have that list and tomorrow, if you needed somebody tomorrow and you use that list and you got successful, that would take care of it. But 5 years from now, if that list hasn't been updated, it wouldn't be correct because these places change all the time, just like everything else. So I came up with this list. It's in your handouts. I've actually devised this as I went through this to do a presentation for our group. So the questions that you should ask are the ones on the outside, and the things to think about in bold. And we'll go through that just a little bit. You really need to be sure that this place does an assessment and a care plan. That means that way they know what you need and they do a care plan so that the person who comes knows exactly what they're supposed to do. The care plan is their list of tools. That way you can hold them to that list. So you need to be sure that everything you want to have done is on that list before the supervisor leaves. Another question is, who does this assessment and this care plan? Are they a licensed person? One agency told me, I do it myself. Well, this is a guy on the phone who doesn't really have any qualifications other than he owns the business. I would like to have a licensed person, or at least someone who's done this kind of care for some time. And then you need to ask them how they do their vetting. Do they do a background check? Do they do a VMV check? Do they do references? How about experience? And how long is their average employee stay? That's really important. And there's also the licenses. Are they licensed? Are they not licensed? How do they treat their employees? Are they employees? Are they contractors? Do they have health insurance? We all know health insurance is really important. Do they get paid sick leave and vacation? Because employees with benefits are happier employees, and they'll stay longer, and you'll have a better caregiver. Do they place the same caregiver? In other words, are you going to have Susie today, Mary the next day, Judy next week? Or are you going to have Mary all the time? On that line, though, if they place the same caregiver, what if this caregiver gets sick? How long will it take them to provide a substitute? Then the other thing that's important to you is, do they have a minimum? Almost all of them have a minimum of 4 hours per trip. There are some that have fewer hours that you can get for fewer hours, but they usually charge more for the per hour for fewer hours. So you have to look at your budget and what you can handle. How does this organization communicate? I will tell you that I called one organization that is on our Ashby Village vetted list and was told that somebody would call me back with the information I was asking for. And I'm still waiting for that call. Now, granted, I could have followed up, and if I really needed somebody, I would have. But if they drop the ball, I happen to know this organization. I know they're a pretty good organization. But if they drop the ball, then what happens when I'm old and feeble and need assistance and I don't have the energy to call it back? The rates run from $25 an hour to $32 an hour, depending, you may be able to find some that are less than that. Now, I will also tell you that on our vetted list, and this is a personal comment, on our vetted list there is an organization called Peace and Love Network. And I have a friend who just had help from them when her husband was on hospice, and she was just absolutely delighted. They were wonderful. She can't say enough good things about them. They are not one of the highly organized organizations. So I'm not talking myself around in circles here. But I hope this is helpful at some point. Do we have any questions?
So let's have, say, 4 questions. So we can keep on. Yeah.
4 questions, okay.
If you're on hospice, do they provide the caregiver or the organizations that provide the caregiver?
If you're on hospice, well, now we're getting into Medicare certified stuff. Medicare certified hospice will provide a caregiver probably 2 or 3 days a week that will do the personal care. But if you need somebody for more than that, that person may stay 2 hours, maybe not that long. If you need somebody that will be for more than time than that, then you will need to hire a caregiver.
Do they help you find somebody, or you have to do it on your own?
They have a social worker that would help you find somebody, yes. Any other questions? Okay. All right.
Tanya is next.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I was a teacher, so my voice does carry, but I tend to talk too fast. I had an unexpected event happen. I have a gardener who has been taking care of my yard for 5 years, and she suddenly found herself homeless. Well, it wasn't so sudden, but anyway, she lives in a garage. She lived in a garage in Berkeley, and for the last 7 years, and for the rest of the 20 years, she lived in the house there. But the house has been, well, who knows what's going on. Anyway, she suddenly cleared out of her garage, and she had like an hour to get her stuff out, and I said, okay, well, you can come and live with me. Now, I live in Albany, and it's a very small house, 2 bedrooms upstairs with a bathroom in between. But she's really worked out well. She's been with me now for 7 months. And I don't do any of my yard work anymore. I've got a lot of stuff going on in that yard. And I don't do any of my housework either. She does it all. So I'm not paying her, and she's not paying me, and it's really working well. She's kind of an odd person. She likes living off the grid. Her last name is not her given last name, but so far we've worked really well together. I will take her here and there sometimes. She doesn't drive anymore, and she is 64. I'm 75, and we get along just great. So far, so good. It wasn't planned, but I really like having somebody around. My greatest fear is having a stroke, because I have a friend who had one, and she wasn't found for 3 days, and now she's paralyzed permanently, and it's pretty awful. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm 75, and this is not forever, but I did tell her, well, I plan to move into Belmont Village, which is a half a mile from me in Albany, when I turn 80, which is 4.5 years from now. So that's where I'm at right now.
Tony? You might just mention we're still working on the issue of having people come and live with us. And we found out that in Berkeley and other places that you're really exempt from the draconian eviction notices. You can basically say get out and have them out immediately, practically. What we don't know right now is whether the city really enforces that very much. If somebody wanted to really make an issue and not to comply, but the law is on your side so long as it's your own house and you're sharing some part of the facility, a bathroom, the kitchen, or whatever. So that's good news, and it says, you know, that you're not in a position to get stuck with somebody, but we're doing some more research to find out about the eviction process. What happens if somebody really makes a stink and doesn't want to go? Will the city back you up or not? Okay.
I can tell you a little bit about that one. She was in Berkeley, and the woman who owns the house has owned it for more than 21 years, and she and most of the other people are still there, even though it was sold out from under her a year and a half ago. They're all still living there. One of the people that was there started paying individually his portion of the rent, and so he's there, and they're all there. Just that my friend isn't, because her garage got cleared out immediately. That was the easy part. So Berkeley, they finally located the actual, the deed. They found the deed. And it's somewhere in Delaware or something like that. I mean, it's just very strange. So she's been fighting it for a year and a half. Still hasn't. They're all there.
Question before you go. Is she living in the house? Is the landlord living in the house?
Yeah.
And so they share a facility, a kitchen or a bathroom?
They share the whole house.
Gotcha. So
Yep.
that's good to know.
And her granddaughter.
Yeah.
And her daughter. And a lot of other people. It's just very close to campus.
Okay.
I think the thing may be that, yes, they can't stay there, but how are you going to get them out?
Yes, that was the
I know some people who had some experience in Albany, and the Albany police said that's not our job.
Okay. Oh, okay, so watch out. We're still working on it though. Okay, Virginia's next. Oh, any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had students live at the house.
Can you talk about
We've had students live at our house. We have a spare room. And no, it's okay. And when you have a student, it's for a set period of time. And so you know exactly how long they'll be there, and that's the arrangement that you made with them. And we've never had a problem with that.
Yeah, I would expect that would work well.
So do you want to just repeat what she said?
Yeah, she's had students live with her one at a time. And they have an end moment, and they've always left at that end moment, and they've had no problems with it.
Thank you. Okay. Virginia.
She's not speaking.
Okay. I'm going to hopefully not go on too long here, but there's a lot of material. I'm going to talk about if you decide that either you don't want to deal with the hassles of home ownership and, you know, you would need to put in that walk-in shower and stair lift lift and all of these other modifications to your home in order to stay there, what kind of options are there for senior housing facilities? And I'm not talking about the kind of apartment where everybody who lives there is over 55 and everything else. I'm talking about, they're usually apartment buildings, hundreds of residents, but you can get assisted living kind of help there through agencies they use or employees of the facility. So you usually, for independent living and assisted living, pay a small entrance fee of like 1 to 2 months rent to kind of get the apartment ready for you. There's some health and financial requirements, but they're not that stringent. You can rent anything from a studio to a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The rent is month to month. All of the apartments are senior friendly. They have walk-in showers, no barriers. You've got, not only do you wear a pendant, but they have the emergency alerts at least 1 or 2 places in the apartment. And, but not all of the apartments are ADA compliant. Most of them have a kitchen or a partial kitchenette. There's a central dining room, the different plans you can have. You eat 1 meal there, 3 meals there, whatever. Regarding the 24-hour, there's a 24-hour emergency alert system, but that doesn't mean that the person who is there has medical experience. It just means there is a person there who can call 911. You get housekeeping once a week, once every other week. Usually your personal laundry separate. Most are pet friendly for small pets. And they have all kinds of activity rooms, gardens, a salon, barber shop, a computer room, library, etc. All your utilities are covered except for telephone and internet. Most have Wi-Fi in at least part of the building. Many have weekly or monthly services of a podiatrist or doctor. Many have a rehab room for either PT or OT if you're recovering from an injury or just need to get stronger. Many of the assisted living services are available on an a la carte basis. You can say, I need help 3 times a week taking a shower, and they say, okay, that'll be X number of dollars more. You can get assistance with showering, dressing, medication management, an aid to help you get to the dining room, etc. As you need more services, often they're not a la carte, but there's kind of a package that you would purchase. In general, assisted living and independent living apartments are on the same floors, although not always. Particularly if you needed to be in a wheelchair, you might be on a separate floor in an ADA compliant apartment. The main advantage here is you pay for the services as you need them, but there are disadvantages too. It's a month-to-month rental. If you run out of money, you're out the door. If you need a memory care unit, which I'll discuss next, you have to move. Not all senior living facilities that have independent and assisted living have a memory care unit. And if you need skilled nursing, you will definitely have to move to another place. The only exception is that you can usually have hospice in your own apartment. So what is memory care and when do you need it? Well, if you just have mild memory loss and dementia and you can't remember recent events and maybe you have some difficulty in tasks like cooking or driving, you can usually stay in your independent apartment or assisted living apartment. But if you have more moderate to severe dementia, then you have to live in a memory care unit. In these stages, communication is difficult. You lose your ability to understand what's going on around you. You may get lost and often require daily full-time assistance with eating, dressing, and toileting, and in really late stages, you may not recognize loved ones. A memory care unit is a locked unit. The rooms obviously don't have any kitchens. You pay more, but there are a lot more services. Usually you get 3 meals daily and snacks. You get daily housekeeping services, including laundering linens as needed. You get medication management, and an individually tailored variety of activities to try to keep you as mentally aware as they can and as calm as possible. All meals and activities are done on the memory care unit, and there's much more supervision and checking on the resident. Now, space is available. You don't have to be a current resident of the independent or assisted living in another part of that senior living facility to enter a memory care unit. Again, this is a month-to-month rental. If you run out of money, you are out. If your dementia is severe enough so that you no longer can swallow and you need a feeding tube, you would have to move to skilled nursing. If you're belligerent and you're a danger to yourself or other residents and the staff, you would have to move to a skilled nursing facility. So that brings us to the kind of last type of senior housing facility, which is a CCRC, or continuing care retirement community. These usually offer all 4 levels: the independent, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. Once you move in, you never have to move again. Even if you run out of money, they have a so-called benevolence clause. Now, this sounds wonderful, but they're a business. They're not going to take you if they think you're going to run out of money. They cherry pick who they accept. You have to be in relatively good health to get in, and you have to have large financial resources. The entrance fee is in 6 figures. And they will do a very detailed financial analysis of your savings and investments. Do you have a home to sell? Do you have a pension? Do you have long-term care? Blah, blah, blah. As Charlie said, how long, according to actuarial tables, they expect you to live. And then they figure out how much they think it would take to take care of you for that amount of time, and then look at your financial resources and say, yes, we accept you, or no, we don't. The main advantage of a CCRC is that you can have all 4 levels of care and you won't have to move. If you make friends and you get to know staff and everything else, there's a continuity between the different levels. And all right, so a couple of final thoughts, and then 2 personal experiences in the last 2 years. Most good senior living facilities have waiting lists. One person who our group met with had waited over a year to get the apartment that she wanted at a CCRC. Every senior living facility is different from the others. You really need to visit different places, take a tour, eat a meal there, look at the activities, look at the apartments, talk to residents, and ask yourself whether you could be happy there, and do you have the money? And weigh the facility cost versus the cost of maintaining your home and modifying it for, making your home accessible. And, the other thing to consider is, as you get frailer, are you isolated in your home, as you're not able to get out to see friends and do activities, whereas if you're in a senior facility, you would have much more opportunity to do these. When you find a place that you're interested in, you have to visit several times and ask a lot more questions and consider whether you want to sign up on that waiting list. So my 2 personal experiences. first one had a relatively good outcome. My Aunt Amy in New York was 89 at the time, mentally sharp as a tack, but almost totally blind. An emergency situation came up that meant she could no longer stay in her friend Mary's house as Mary's dementia was worsening. She didn't have any children. There's one nephew in New York. The rest of the nieces and nephews were scattered from Texas to California. She made no provisions for anything. With a lot of work from my cousin Peter in New York and myself, a lot of negotiating, and a lot of luck, we were able to find a good independent living place, senior residence for her, that made adaptations in her apartment and in general for her low vision. And we immediately took my aunt to a lawyer so that she had an advanced health care directive and financial power of attorneys, etc. Now the bad outcome was her friend Mary. Mary was 88 at the time, physically very healthy, but her dementia was worsening, first slowly and then more rapidly. She hadn't made any provisions. She had no living relatives. And after many hospitalizations, she was put into a nursing home to get stronger and to try to get her anti-anxiety and antipsychotic medications adjusted. The hope was that she would get well enough and be able to move into the memory care unit in the senior residence facility my aunt was living in. But unfortunately, Mary never made it to the memory care unit. She had no health care directive, no financial power of attorney. She became a ward of New York. The court appointed a guardian. In California, would be a conservator, both for her person and her financial affairs. Took 5 months to get a court-appointed guardian. During that time, Mary just languished in the nursing home. Their approach was, we don't want her to be a bother. We don't have staff, so when she's acting up, you give her a large dose of medication and you restrain her. So she was basically drugged all the time. The conservator has to do everything possible to keep you alive. So when the nursing home said, she's not eating, she's losing weight, blah, 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 we want to have a feeding tube put in, the guardian said, fine, I approve it. Mary would ping-pong back and forth between the hospital and the nursing home. There were amputations for gangrene. It was a complete horror that lasted 1.5 years until Mary died in the nursing home. My final advice is to get your paperwork in order, look at senior housing choices before an emergency happens, and that way you and your agents will know what your wishes are and you can see that they're followed. Questions?
Hi. At the beginning you talked about assisted living and independent living as something that you could do together in the same place. But I didn't know which places you were talking about. Is there a list?
Okay. Okay, there isn't.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. She asked, she said I spoke about independent living and assisted living, and is there a list of places, etc. We worked with a gerontologist who had a list, and we went to see a lot of places with him, but as a group. But, you know, I mean, if you Google, you know, senior living residences in Alameda County or something, I mean, you'd get a list a mile long. And usually independent living means you don't need any kind of help with activities of daily living. But you can usually get help with activities of daily living in an independent apartment. a la carte. But if you need more services, then you may be considered more in assisted living. Some facilities, those are separate apartments. Sometimes they're on a separate floor. Sometimes they're all mixed together, and you may be in independent living in an apartment and the person next to you is in assisted living.
What are you saying? Google it?
No, I'm not saying Google it. I'm saying you could. But we worked with a gerontologist who Charlie's going to introduce, unless you want to stand up for a minute, Alan.
We have two people here, so maybe we'll do a quick introduction right now. We have a consultant and a real estate person, both of whom are experts in providing this kind of information. So Alan, there you are. This is Alan Morgenstern, and he assisted us in looking at assisted living and independent living and CCRCs, and you can get a brochure about Alan. Another person that's here is Joanne Sullivan, who's a real estate agent and another expert on senior housing. Joanne, there you are. Okay, so talk to Joanne, because there's publications that have listing of literally hundreds of places, as well as the internet. So I think that you'll be able to get more detailed information from them.
But like Charlie said, we took our advice from the experts. And I can't say enough about how valuable that is.
I have two questions. One, when you say you don't have to move, are you saying you don't have to move from the facility, or you don't have to move from your apartment if you go to the next level of care?
Okay. The question is, when I said you don't have to move, does that mean you don't have to move from your apartment, or does that mean you don't have to move from the facility?
Right.
Definitely means you don't have to move from the facility. Whether or not you have to move from your apartment depends on the facility. In some cases, you can stay in the same apartment that you have in independent living and have assisted living services there. But if you go to memory care, no. That is a separate locked unit. You have to move into that. And skilled nursing facility also is separate.
But it's within the same facility?
Yes. NACCRC only.
Right, and it's life care?
Sort of. But not like life care was, 30 years ago. I mean, it's impossible for those kind of type A contracts. They don't exist anymore with people living longer, with a lot of people going on with Alzheimer's and being in memory care units for years. You get a certain number or a period of time where either it would be at your old fee or at a reduced fee, but then after that, the rate would be higher. When you go into these, you may not have to move out of the facility, but as you need more services, you're going to be paying more.
Okay, so if you're going from independent to assisted, your rates are a certain amount. But if you end up in skilled nursing, you have to pay more, and that's in the contract?
Yes, the contracts are very detailed, and yeah.
And my other question was, when you visited a number of facilities, could you just say their names and the ones that might have struck you as being the best?
Let me read the names right now.
Charlie, she asked, could we give the names of the places we visited?
Is that on one of our handouts?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on one of the handouts.
Okay.
Basically, the Point in Oakland, the Lake Mirror, which is a CCRC, Piedmont Gardens, which is also a CCRC. That means it has all levels.
But Lake Mirror has all levels.
Lake Merritt did not have
independent.
Okay, then that's a mistake. Lake Merritt has skilled nursing, but not memory care. Grand Lake Gardens, Belmont Gardens, Merrill Gardens. But what we really want you to do is talk to the experts, seriously, because there's a lot of complexity in all of this. I mean, Virginia's getting a great start, but there's a huge amount of complexity. Each place is different. And that's the important thing. It's hard to generalize, I think.
Is it okay to ask Glenna if the three things that drew you to Piedmont Gardens, is that right? Three things.
Okay, just a second, repeat the question. Want to ask Glenna what three things attracted her to Piedmont Gardens?
On the visits I made to Piedmont Gardens, I met people who were like me, who were friendly, and their life stories were like mine. I liked, it was important for me to be, for me to be in a neighborhood where I could walk everywhere. It's a great neighborhood for people who like to walk. And there are a ton of great restaurants there. And that's two things. One more. I wanted a CCRC. I didn't want my daughters to have to take care of me in a big way when I needed care. And I visited all the levels of care in each facility.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Glenna.
Back there? Oh, yes, I was wondering, when you go, that you have to give all this financial information. Are there sliding scales? How do they come up with rates for you?
Okay, the rates are going to be dependent on what apartment you rent. Obviously, a studio is less than a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, on an upper floor with a bay view and, all of that. They're going to depend on, are you going to take 1 or 3 meals in the dining room? What kind of assisted living services do you need? And you figure it's like renting any apartment, your rent's going to go up every year, probably 4 or 5%, so no, there's not a sliding scale, that based on, your income or anything else. It's based on the unit that you're going to occupy and what services you need.
You suggest using experts to help with either real estate or just the visit. Can you give us an idea of what to expect to pay for that advice?
Talk to them, they're here.
Okay.
Okay, they asked, what does it cost to get the experts' advice, to visit places, etc., and Charlie said, talk to them, they're here.
Can I just answer that really quickly?
Okay, Alan Morgenstern, a gerontologist.
So for people who bring you to assisted living, they don't charge people, but they do get a referral fee if you move into that facility. So it's like a real estate agent, more or less. If they're taking you to other places.
More questions?
Are you going to talk about reverse mortgages today?
No.
Well, we're going to go through a list of all the other stuff, and whatever questions come, we'll do our best. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So, are there any more for Virginia? So I'm going to ask Glenna, you didn't get a chance to prepare. Is there anything you would like to voluntarily say, just off the cuff?
There are so many activities and trips and a great gym to work out in. It met all of my needs, and that's all.
And a social life.
Well, all of that depends on my social.
Right.
You're saying and social.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I have a lot of friends, but as I got older, it was harder for me to do the things the younger friends were doing, like hiking or traveling. And
that was an advantage of where I ended up, that there were many, many activities I could do as a guest or somebody just living there.
Okay, can I add one thing, Glenna? Because you did say in the beginning, earlier on, that you didn't have to have all that work to take care of your house. That was another plus. And I can certainly imagine that would be a big plus for a lot of people. I'd love to get that off of my back. I'm not ready to do it yet, but anyway. Okay, so those are the formal presentations so far.
There's somebody who wants to ask
Oops.
a question.
There's another question? Where is it? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, the last I knew, a place like Piedmont Gardens, they charge an entrance fee to get in, which I guess is part of this continuing care cost. But the last I knew, it was well over $100,000, and that was for a studio apartment. Can you talk about some of that cost?
Okay, the question was, could we talk a little bit about costs at Piedmont Gardens, that even for a studio, the entrance fee is well over $100,000. And yes, that is correct. Entrance fees can range anywhere from $100,000 to well over $500,000. You know, it depends. The devil is in the details of your contract, and it's, I don't know, I'm not gonna, I prefer this question to Alan if he wants to answer it, but you want to address anything about fees and ranges and what they would cover?
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a big distinction between assisted living, which Virginia mentioned, which is a month-to-month fee, which has just a one-time move-in fee that probably averages between $5,000 and $10,000 in most places. But a CCRC has a buy-in cost. So when she's talking about the buy-in, so in a place like Piedmont Gardens, the buy-in just depends on the apartment. Of other CCRCs, the price also depends on how much you would get back if you left or you died.
Right.
So so basically you can buy, the more you pay, you basically get insurance. Where at Piedmont Gardens, after 4 years, that money's gone. That money.
I didn't hear his last sentence.
Okay.
No, the buy-in is gone.
Okay.
Just if you were to move out or die, you don't get anything back.
Okay. What Alan said is that at Piedmont Gardens, the fee that you pay when you move into the independent living or assisted living is just based on the apartment that you're going to move into. At other CCRCs, you can pay different fees depending on whether you want part of that fee to be able to be returned to your heirs and things like that. But at Piedmont Gardens, you pay a set fee. If you die within 4 years, your heirs would get a certain amount back, but if it's after 4 years, no, nothing.
Thank you.
And just to add one more little note, there actually are different categories of CCRCs. There's A's, B's, and C's, and they all have different plans, and within them they have different plans. There's so much complexity. You've really got to look at an individual situation. But this is the beginning. This is where you start. And that's the whole point of having the conversation is you have to dig into it. I wouldn't even consider signing up at any CCRC that I hadn't visited 4 or 5 times at least. I've been to Piedmont Gardens twice myself, and I don't know very much yet. They're not telling me all the things that I know already, but they're not ready to tell me. So there's a lot of work. We're going to have something out with more detail on this. It just takes a lot of time to get all this pulled together. And we want to make sure it's accurate. So great questions, but it's hard to give you definitive answers. Yes?
Several of you visited several facilities.
Yeah.
What did you just say about what size groups you went in? Did you overwhelm? Did you just usually go in twos or groups of 5 or?
Well, I don't remember. I guess the biggest group, Alan, was what? Do we have 6 of us? Did we do 6?
You seem like 30 or 40.
Yes. They ran out of food. We always went for lunch, at least one place, and you should do that. If you're going to go somewhere, you want to find out what kind of food you're going to get. But we went in larger groups. I think it typically, 2 to 4 would be better because, too big a group, you kind of lose a little bit of focus sometimes. Yeah. But you can arrange, there's any number of ways you could do it. But just go, and go to a lot of places. Even if you hate them, you learn something. No, I mean, seriously, that's one of the great things about going to something you don't like. You learn more from that than you do from the one you like. And that's why the real estate people, Joanne, I hope I'm saying this correct, take you to houses you don't like first. Is this true? Oh. Sorry, okay, got that wrong. In any case, so I think the key to success is get out there, go see places, go back, talk to people that you know that are there, use experts, and just keep on until you get to the point where you really know that you've got the right answer. And it's a lot of work. Okay?
Charlie?
Yeah.
Can I just say, it doesn't have to be me, but if you go to these places without somebody who knows them, you're dealing only with marketing people.
Yes.
And as you said, you went twice and you still haven't gotten your answers. But the answers you get are marketing answers.
Yes.
And places tend to say they can do things that they cannot.
Yes.
And it's really hard to really understand the distinctions between one place and another based on a marketing person, because they all say yes to everything.
Yes. That's a very, very valid point. They'll tell you what they'd like you to hear because they want to sign you up. They're like a big hotel. They need to keep full to make money. And so they're really eager to keep, make sure that their places are full, and they want to get people in there. And I wouldn't say marketing people are unscrupulous. I would never say that in public. Yes?
Yes, and when you're invited to a lunch, it's usually in the penthouse upstairs, and it is not the same food.
Oh, well, in this case, actually, we didn't go to any penthouse places.
We had their regular food. Yeah, we did. With the regular. Yes.
Yeah. But however, there's a lot of CCRCs. There's some I couldn't even get in the door, And I have to tell you, let me tell you a couple of CCRC stories. So my sister is living in one in Santa Rosa. It's a really good quality one. It was owned by the Episcopalians, okay? They ran a pretty good show. It was not cheap. It was more than Piedmont Gardens. If you want to pay $1 million, you could probably pay $1 million entrance fee. So, I'm not interested in that. But on the other hand, it was great for my sister because that's where her daughters live, and she could afford it. And they did a good job. And they were just sold to another company. And you know what? The services are all of a sudden disappearing. So these are some of the other things that you have to think about. And you can't always know the answers to these things in advance. But these are things to think about. If you're making a commitment to move somewhere, it's not always a sure thing that that place will stay the same for the next 5, 10, 15 years. So that's a consideration. Okay, whoa, questions? My God.
Charlie, can I just add on to what you just said? The comment when Mary Jo was speaking about home care facilities, companies that assign home care. She mentioned the incident of the one on our vetted list that didn't respond to her. That is true of many facilities. They are changing the staff, they're changing their services, And while we do a very good job at vetting, and they are generally recommended by other members of Ashley Village, that is something to be mindful of. And as part of the questioning process is, tell us about how your services have changed. Tell us how the leadership of the organization has changed. Because those things are going to be reflected in the services that the people get.
And may I introduce Hilda, who is our social care manager, and her introduction is coming up, but that was a great way to, okay.
You said visit as many as possible. Did you have to part with financial information at every visit?
No, you don't have to part with anything. No, they just want to get you in and start selling you, and they're more than happy to have you come in. So it's easy to get in first or second time, and you can give them some financial information. As far as I'm concerned, this is really going to sound unethical, but maybe you don't have to give them all the information that they want and see what happens. I don't know. Question?
I had a question whether you have a list of questions or a list is available.
It's coming.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm forgetting to repeat the questions. And my manager over here is not reminding me. So the question is, do we have a list of questions to ask? We're working on that. And it's a great list. Trust me. I'm going to tell you a story about my brother. So my sister and brother both went to two great places. My brother went to a place in Davis called University Retirement. Perfect for him because he's a university guy. They're all university people up there from Davis and so on. And they have good food and a lot of great stuff about it. I mean, he researched it for 5 years. I don't think we're going to do that. But they made a great decision. Now, the company that is running this has reneged on their promise to keep everybody in the same facility. They want to build a new facility for assisted care across the road so that they'll be isolated from the independent people. Well, the big selling point is you start at independent, you make friends, you move on, but your friends are still there. Well, they're not going to be there. So guess what? My brother and a bunch of like-minded people have sued the ownership. And guess what? My brother is winning. So far, anyway. We'll see how it comes. He's going to tie him up in court. And I think he's going to end up winning. But that's just an example of things you've got to kind of think ahead. Okay? More questions? Was that? You're scratching your head. Okay. We are going to move on then to the review of what we have done and what remains to be done and some of our team learnings. So this is kind of, we've already covered some of it in our presentations and in some of the questions that have come up. So now what I'd like to do is just kind of, I hope you've had a chance to look at this. That was the idea. Go down this and see what other questions are coming up on other topics that are on this list. So,
the top of the page. Define the page.
Okay, the first page is what we have done and what remains to be done. And then the second one, which is I think the one we want to go to more, is some of our learnings. We've already covered the legal and financial. We've covered a lot about living in our own house. We've covered a lot of stuff about independent living. I'm just going to tell you some things that we haven't done that we're looking at doing. And one is we still have more to do looking at having somebody live in our house. That's really an appealing idea. And but there's a lot of things we don't know yet. And particularly whether we're going to get stuck. So another thing in terms of alternate housing is condos. This is kind of a favorite of mine as an in-between step. If you don't go directly from your own home to some kind of senior facility, you could go to a condo and you get a lot of stuff there, a lot of services, a lot of chances for more social activity, and a lot less maintenance and upkeep. There's a lot of things. So that's just a little thought. We haven't looked at that. Downsizing and moving, there's a lot of work to be done there. Believe me, this is a great time to start, right now. Geriatric advocacy, we don't even know what that means yet, but we know there's a term and we're going to find out. Building your personal support network, that is a really important thing to do. Mine isn't adequate at the moment. My next door neighbors will take me to the hospital if I need to. They already have. I give their dog doggy bones regularly. And so it's been really good so far. But on the other hand, I need more of a network. What if they're out of town? I don't have enough of a network now, so that's coming. Something we have to. How to decide when it's time to move. That's really a major thing. I'm not sure what to say on that yet, but we'll have something to say. Keep tuned. Budget and financial analysis. Costs of staying in your home versus moving. You should do this. And you're in luck because we are developing a tool to do this. There's a lot of tools out there. I think mine's going to be better. So it's going to be a real pain for you, but to be honest, if you're going to do it, you should do it right. Okay. Any questions on any of that? Yes?
I don't see on your list anything about a home alert system.
Yes. Very, very good. That was a test to see if you're reading. Okay. It's on my list at home, and somehow I left it off.
What was the question?
So the question was, I don't see anything about home alert and medical alert systems. Go ahead.
Comparison of the different systems.
Right. They're very confusing. So the question is, and comparison of the various systems. And, wait, okay, just a second. Yes, that's really coming up very soon in our list. That may be our next meeting. There's a lot of different options. I mean, your iPhone could be a very good system. There's ones that will alert people when you fall down. Your iPhone won't. So if you happen to have it in your hand all the time, you can press a button, but it won't tell like my aunt. Okay? That kind of a system wasn't available for her, but there's a whole lot of things. Good question. Anything else? Okay, so I'd like to move on to some of our team learnings. Okay? And we've listed only 18. We've learned a lot more than that. But I'm going to suggest we just go down this really quickly, and me or any of the members here will make a comment if they have one. You please ask a question if you have one. So the first one is, it's possible to live independently at home well into your 90s. One of the best things our group did was have a group of 4 ladies. One of them is here today. Mary, are you here?
Which Mary?
Mary.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay, well, so you're one of the people that came and talked to us about living in your home when you're getting older than we were, okay? And all of the 4 ladies were in their 90s or are in their 90s now, and they were incredible, the arrangements they made. And it was not only inspiring, but it was really helpful to get a different perspective. I couldn't imagine myself in that situation until I heard from you guys.
Well, in my case, very little was done. I've been in the Bay Area only 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I have a small house, and I like to live by myself. I like to cook.
Yes.
So I don't want to move to a place where they tell me when to eat, what to eat.
I remember that vividly from our first meeting. Nobody's going to tell you when or where you're going to dine.
So I'd like to have some arrangement where I would have help in my house.
Right.
But I cannot rent part of the house, it's small.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Well, it was a wonderful presentation, and I would recommend that you have that opportunity at some point in the future. It's really worth it to hear the stories of people that are ahead of you. It's really worth it. And there was one of the people, I'm sorry, I remember Flora May, but I don't remember the other name right now, who was very disabled and was still doing it in a remarkable way. I just could
Margie,
yes.
Flora May is quite the opposite.
No, I know Flora May is she's still climbing mountains. Yeah, yeah.
Stairs.
But Margie is very disabled and still doing a remarkable job of living at home.
Yep.
It can be done, but it depends.
She has help 4 hours a day.
Yeah. Okay, and may I change subject briefly? Mary needs a ride home today.
I'm taking her home.
Oh, you are? Taken care of. Moving on. So number 2, number 3, we've already talked about some of that. But if you have any questions, number 2, 3, 4, 5, does anybody have any questions on any of those? Well,
Excuse me.
yes.
I just have a suggestion for information.
Sure.
There's a publication called Bay Area Checkbook. They do marvelous research, just like Consumer Reports does, on things in this area, including doctors, including nursing homes, these kinds of things that we're talking about. And
Okay.
everything, but they're very reliable.
Say it again, Bay Area Checkbook?
Yeah.
Okay, online?
You get an online subscription and you can get one mailed to you.
Okay.
And they have it at the library.
Okay.
Library at Kentucky.
Sounds good. Well, we're checking out.
Very good. Very good, Charlie.
Okay, we have several endorsements. So that's something we're learning from you guys, which is great. So anything come up from 1 to 5? No. Okay, number 6, there's a lot of professional resources available if you decide to move. And boy, is that an understatement. There are enormous number of people. Here's the issue, picking the right one. Picking people that will do estate sales, people that will do cleaning, people that will do other services. There's a lot of not good people out there. Check them out. That's all I would have to say on that right now. I could tell you a lot about some of the estate sale people, but there are a lot of really good people, and I know that people in the panel here know some of them. So we don't have a list at this point.
Yeah, see, I know that my friend who moved into Piedmont Gardens, they helped find somebody for my friend Debbie to do all of her packing and moving and so forth. So that's one good research source for that.
Yeah.
Isn't that something Ashby Village would help us with?
And I don't know if Ashby Village has that particular list. They probably have some.
Yes, they do.
List of,
I'm sorry, of places that would help you organize, declutter, move. Decluttering we do.
we do declutter, but we also have an individual that we use as a consultant as well. And we're building on that list as well. But Sarah, back here, can speak more about that.
Oh, well, actually here, Jeff Engel is the coordinator of the decluttering activities. But yes, if you call into Ashby Village, they aren't able to do necessarily an entire house or an unlimited amount. They would generally steer you to their list of preferred providers. But otherwise, Ashby Village volunteers will come in, and many times after they do a visit and do a plan and have come out and helped you organize and get an approach to it, you will feel much more comfortable going forward yourself, or getting somebody to help you in a way that originally you might not envisioned. Yeah.
Great. That's a good comment. And I'm just going to give a testimonial here because I have used Ashby Village's decluttering services, and I rate A+ on my experience. I was able to declutter and claim some of that on a tax write-off, and I came out way ahead. So that's why we're footing the bill on the refreshments today. Okay. Back in the back.
There are several vetted, like senior mood managers and organizers.
Yes.
And people like that on the Ashby Village list. And you can call in and they'll give you names of people who can check.
Okay, that's great. So Ashby Village does have a lot of referrals that they can make. Good. Okay, back.
There hasn't been as much talk about senior housing, and I'm wondering if there's somebody who's experienced with that who could show you around to that kind of facility.
Irene, what do you mean by senior
What do you mean,
housing?
yeah?
Like the senior housing that was just built up near Pleasant Valley, on Broadway.
Oh, Merrill Gardens? Yeah. Merrill, yeah.
Is it assisted living?
Yep.
Oh, it's both independent. So you know about that?
Yes, and a lot of these places that say are assisted living and independent, there might be one or two people who are independent and everybody else needs assistance. So they're not all the same thing.
And to add to that, we actually, a couple of our people have already visited that place. It's a brand new place, pretty nice. And I think one comment, if I remember, was that they were a little bit of a younger crowd. And maybe it just depends whether that's the group that you feel comfortable with.
The other side of the coin is they're not great on the care side.
And they're not, yes, that was a very good point.
It's a younger crowd.
They're not so great on the care side. And that's something to be thinking about, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Any more questions so far? Okay, let's continue on. Number 8, we visited several CCRC places, and I don't know if it's worth it, but I'll just read them again. We visited The Point, Lake Merritt, Piedmont Gardens, Grand Lake, Belmont Gardens, and Merrill Gardens, which is the one you were talking about. And, to be honest, I don't think any of us really wanted, we didn't go in there saying, boy, this is what I want. I think all of us, we don't want to go there. Any of these places. Well, my own personal reaction is the first 2 places I went, I said, I'll take my chances at home no matter what. Okay? One place that I liked was Piedmont Gardens, which is the place that Glenna is now, because of the same reasons that Glenna said. It's in a neighborhood. You have access. You have restaurants. You have a school up the street you could volunteer. You have a lot of things that you feel connected to a community. And there's some other things about it that were kind of nice. So, other than that, personal preferences vary. And you really got to check them all out. That's all I can say there. So, continuing. Just a comment, other things in the stay-at-home versus moving debate, I'm going to just mention kids as being an issue because it has come up many times that kids, and this is something to be realistic about, your kids sometimes don't want to hear any of this. That's what I've been told. I don't have kids, but I've heard it a lot. Or they may have an agenda. They want you to move. So your interests and theirs may not coincide. And that becomes as much of a challenge as anything else. So I'm not sure we're going to try to go through that, but I'm going to tell you a little story. My nephew Robert in Texas and his mother, who is living nearby, there to help take care of Robert's kids. And she had a bad fall. She needed to move, and she was isolated. She really found a wonderful place to move to that was affordable and everything else. And Robert, who could buy the place, unfortunately, doesn't want her to move.
Why?
We don't know yet, but we think it has something to do with Robert's marriage and his wife. So, but these are things you have to work through. And realistically, this may be the biggest issue that you're going to face. Okay. Moving on. Lawyers and legal affairs we've done. Fiduciaries we've done. I do mention that there are discounted paralegal outfits. I mention that just in honesty because it may be that there are some people that simply need to save every dime. And there are places you can get things done cheaper. However, we don't recommend it because they cannot provide legal advice. And boy, that's what you need. Moving on. Did I say that okay?
Yeah.
Good. All right. We didn't invite them to be here as a guest today. So, in-home care. So, Mary Jo talked about in-home care. But one thing to keep in mind is that at some level, it could get really expensive. It could be a lot more expensive than living in one of the assisted care places. So that's something to think about. The cost of 24-hour care or really intensive skilled care at home could be prohibitive. And if you don't have the insurance or if you don't have the means to do that, then you should think about, it's a bet, but you need to think about that fact. Okay? We're not going to talk about tax. That's too complicated for now. Professional resources. We did visit a place that has done a lot of modifications for living independently with a disability. So we saw firsthand just about everything you can do. And it was very impressive. These folks had some means so they could do it and do a very nice job. But I think that that's another area we might be able to get some more information. The good news is that there are you can get modifications to anything. And the thing that surprised me was if you cannot drive a car normally, you can get your car modified. And in this case, it doesn't cost very much. In fact, it could be free. Toyota has a program, which is absolutely amazing. The hard part is learning how to drive that way. And your mate, if you have a mate, will have to learn how to drive that way also. And so that is one of the big challenges. But yeah.
Charlie, that wasn't exactly true.
Oh, okay.
On a regular way.
They do this all the time.
The car could be used either way, by the wife with her feet and by him with his hands. It was amazing. Yeah. Don't you remember? There were like levers that went down that would press the pedals, and he could use it, or she could just drive the car the normal way.
Okay, everything else I've said has been true. Thank you.
We don't know about any other car except. Yeah, but this was true. This particular situation.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. I really enjoy being corrected. And I really value the information, honestly, and I don't mind looking silly occasionally, which happens, because you need to get the right information. I'm sorry I misspoke on that one. Okay. It's a very complicated business, though, to do all the things that you need to do. There isn't a one-stop shopping place for all of those different modifications, services, materials, and things that you need, okay? You have to find them on your own. And so that's really part of the big challenge. Okay, the last thing, let's see. We did talk about if you had someone move into your house and provide some kind of help. So we've already talked about that. So that's the end of this list. And we're just about on time, so that's great. Any other questions? Yes, oh my God. Bill.
I don't know, 15 years ago or so, my mother lived with me. She was in her 90s.
Yeah.
And the only service that the city of Berkeley offered at the time was bathing. They did that for free. Somebody would come to the house and help her take a shower. Do you know what the cities offer?
Okay, let me repeat this. I'm finally learning the system. Let me repeat the question. Does the city of Berkeley still provide the service of helping in-home bathing? And that was not something that came up in this particular thing. We don't know. They installed a walk-in shower, or you could kind of roll in, I guess. And so that's all we know. They didn't need somebody at that point.
Was she on Medi-Cal by any chance?
No.
Then I have never heard of it.
It was the only free service that the city provided, and I thought that different cities offered different services.
I never heard of that.
Okay. Okay, back.
You mentioned a few things that you're working on, such as the budgeting tool, possibly home alert lists or housing lists. How would we know when those are available to Ashby Village?
You're going to sign up over there with an email, okay? Good.
I really appreciate it.
So the question was, how will you know when all these wonderful things are available? And the answer is, we'll let you know. Okay. Back here?
I'm wondering if you have any suggestions. Some of these places have a heavy requirement in terms of a deposit and a waiting list. And I've recently found out that the waiting list was 300 people. And
wow.
They basically said, what you can do is sell your house and then let us know. And we'll try and accommodate you.
Okay, let me try to repeat that. I'm not going to be able to answer it. Maybe Alan can. I'm going to flip it over to Alan, but let me repeat it. So some places have very long waiting lists.
Yeah.
And one wait.
Deposit.
Pardon?
They require a hefty deposit.
Okay, then they require to get on the waiting list. Yes. Yes, and you think you might be able to get around that by selling your house and walking in and say, here's the money, can you move me up?
Right.
Okay, I have no idea, never heard it. Alan?
I have no idea, Sarah, what place was this?
I don't want to announce it. I don't know whether that should be or not.
Well, if it's accurate, it would...
All right, it's the Redwoods in Mill Valley.
Ah, the Redwoods. I've heard about the Redwoods.
So Redwoods is a CCR state.
Yes, yeah. So I'm sorry, but we don't know the answer to that one right now. But it's interesting. Some places do have very long waiting lists, and so that's, one of the recommendations somewhere else, which you'll get, is you might, if you think you might be inclined to move to one of these places, put in a refundable deposit. They're probably $5,000 on the average, I would guess. Alan, is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
most of them are 100% refundable.
It is refundable, or at least a percentage of it.
Okay, the realtor. Okay.
I know the Redwoods. In the Redwoods, it's a lovely place. And what people do there is they sit in their applications 5 years before they're planning to do. That's what everybody does. And that's just the way it is.
So the Redwoods is so popular, they have a very long waiting list. And the question, though, is can you game the system by going in and saying, I've sold my house?
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
I think you have to put the deposit in and fill out your application 5 years before. And you do it with all your friends, so you can all do this together.
By the way, it's in Mill Valley.
It's in Mill Valley, right, yeah. So, okay.
Charlie, my understanding is that some places have a time-limited refundable fee, and it is only partially refunded, not fully refunded.
That's right.
Well,
that's what I have.
And I believe that. The ones that I have encountered so far, which is a pretty small list, have all been refundable, but I'm not making any claim. And in this other document that would, send out, it makes the point that check the refundability before you put any money down, yeah. And I didn't actually repeat the question, sorry. Okay, more? Yes?
I just had a question that, I don't know if it's frivolous or not, but I'm going to ask.
No frivolous questions.
Has anybody done any cost analysis of staying in a hotel instead of some of these places and what the charges might compare to?
Okay, the question is, has anybody done any cost analysis of a hotel versus some of the other options?
Well, I've heard of somebody deciding that they would just take a cruise all the time.
I'm talking about, a
Yeah.
hotel that has a dining room and whether there's arrangements that you can make. I know you could do that on a month basis in some hotels, and I was just wondering if anybody's checked that out yet.
I don't think we have considered that, and I'm not aware of anything personally. Is anybody else in the room aware of that kind of comparison? Okay, not yet? Yeah, I guess the thing to do would be to go to a hotel and say, go to the Shattuck, see what they have to say. I don't know. But it's interesting. But, I mean, that's the kind of alternative. And Joanne knows a huge amount, Joanne Sullivan in the back, knows a lot about alternative co-ops and pocket housing, and I can't remember all the terms, so you might want to check with her afterwards. Okay, back. Yeah. You. Yes.
I also wanted to point out that some people have decided to live in San Miguel de Allende. And the memory care instead of $9,000 a month is $2,500 a month.
And that would be in another country?
With memory care, you might not know that you're in
That's true. And also, well, wait, first of all, the question or comment was that, the memory care or the more expensive care is much less expensive in some other parts of the world. I know people that are looking all over the world, Thailand, the uplands of Thailand, where it's 120 in the summer, and, Ecuador, and so on. I'm personally learning Spanish, currently working on that right now. So, but that's another option. Moving. There are big expat communities in a lot of areas.
You mentioned that a group was forming for people that are...
We're just about to get to that.
Okay.
So can I hold off for just a second? And then we'll do that whole thing, okay? I'm sorry, did I cut you off? What else did you want to say? I'm sorry. Did you just want to know more information?
I just want to know how to do that.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that in just a second. So let's wrap up this part right now. We had a lot of good questions, thank you. I think we've already done the introductions that we plan to do. Alan, Joanne, and Nola, and Hilda. And Mary. So I think we can move right on to new group is starting up. So let me just say one thing. I'd like to introduce Sarah Hawthorne, who is planning to start a new group, and she's going to say a few words about that.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because we weren't expecting such a huge turnout, so...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, why don't you take...
Yeah, we weren't expecting such a huge turnout. We were thinking it was going to be a small and intimate group. And just to give you a quick sense of it, we wanted to be sure that people who came here and who had the opportunity to see how helpful it is to do this learning process within sort of a smaller group as they did of like 8 to 10 or 12 people. It's easier to get experts to come and talk to you. It's easier when you go set up visits to go places. And also it's just helpful to hear other people's experiences. It's like, going through the process in stereo. So what we thought we would do is just get people's names, and the easiest way to do it is for people to email me. My name is Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at ashbyvillage.org. All you have to do is put in the subject line, senior housing group. And then I will get back to people with an email. I think that's easier than trying to have a sign-up sheet and where you're trying to read the emails and read what people's names were and stuff. But that's, I will then contact people. You may have heard from Charlie that the way they got started is they're already part of a neighborhood group. So they knew each other and they were, had a system for how they all came together. So what Ashby Village wanted to do is be sure that if there were people who wanted to be in such a group, not all the neighborhood groups are appropriate and robust enough to take on something like this, that there was a chance for people to give me their names, and I'm going to definitely shepherd the first group. There's no commitment about it. In other words, you're coming to the first group doesn't mean you've signed on to anything. But it would give us a chance to get together as a people and experiment to see whether there's an interest in having another group somewhat similar to what the group here has done to go forward with learning, because it is very complex and there's so much to go on. Yes?
Could you repeat the subject line, please?
Sure, and there's nothing automatic about it, so like anything you put, in fact, if I get an email with nothing on it, I will put you on my list. But I just thought it makes it easier for me when I'm looking down at my email, just senior housing group, housing, senior, anything will do. But it gives me your email, and so that way it's real clear. And then I'll do an email back to people to start organizing the first group. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
What is the purpose of the second group if this group is still working?
Oh no, all you want is the information that they're collecting. That's awesome. Just put your name down on that email list that they have and all the things that they're collecting and all that. You can keep on just getting your information from them. But we thought that it was possible there might be a group of people who actually want to come together and be in a small group and actually go out to visit, do a lot of things, contact some experts to come talk to them. It's a different experience to be actively doing it in a small group yourself. But if it's just about information, I think it's awesome what they've done, and just put your name down on the email and get the information.
It's an experience you really need to do.
That's right.
It's a journey, and you really need to do it yourself.
And all those lunches.
We'll be sure they know we want chocolate.
Places that we went in the same way, and none of us, we all had different opinions. One of the things I looked for was lunch, do they serve food at various times, or do I have to be there at a certain time to get food? And I looked at the atmosphere in the dining room. Everybody else was looking at something different. So you really need to do this in a group with yourself.
Yeah, I think there was a bonding process between, this is the same people for a year and a half. We met in the same place, Mary Jo's house. And then after we got finished, we went out to dinner together. And that was a lot of fun. And I think that, and we didn't invite new members. We stayed in just that group, so we didn't have to repeat anything. And we all knew what the last thing was.
Are you still going to be meeting?
Yes, we are.
We got a lot of work to do.
We're having too much fun.
And this group has offered to mentor the group that is new, so we will have support on that. Sarah, did you have a quick question?
It sort of seems, because of the response, that there might be several groups.
Yeah.
If there were, will there be a way to pool the information or combine it with what this group has done already?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of opportunities. Ashby Village mostly just didn't want people to come, get excited about their experience, and then sort of not know how to go forward with an opportunity for developing it. But it's not everybody's thing. It's just we wanted to make sure if there was an interest in another group comparable to theirs starting, that we gave you a way for doing that. So if everybody got it, I'll pass the microphone back. But it's Sarah. Don't forget the H, SARAH, at ashbyvillage.org.
Sarah, before you do. So I had no idea what kind of response you'll get, but if you got a response of 20 people, what do you think?
Well, that's always called the right kind of problem to have. So,
yes.
With the 20 people, we would definitely have the first meeting with everybody that's responded. And out of that, we would decide, do we want a group of 20? Do people want to break into two small groups? I imagine with 20, we would stick with a single group. But obviously, if it was more than that, you're starting. But also, if there's a neighborhood group. Okay. Well, see, they're mentoring me already. It's just going to be great.
You're in trouble.
Okay, great. So we're glad that there's an opportunity for this kind of work to expand. And somebody raised a question about getting all this information gathered together to make it available. And I think it's a great idea, but resources and time, and we haven't figured out how to do that yet. But that's part of the plan. And we're going to be working with Hilda on some stuff and put some information that we have to her if we've got information that's helpful. So we're looking for ways to get information to people. Yeah.
May I make a comment in terms of the whole housing and making a decision? There are financial considerations, there are familial considerations, there are legal considerations, and the list goes on and on. There is another component to how do we make this decision, and that's the emotional component. And I hear about those from some members, and I think it is important to be aware of that and be thinking about how do you address this life-changing decision. Along with that is what Charlie was talking about earlier, how do I attend to myself and the family dynamics that can emerge and do emerge around that decision. So I just want you to know that our area, the members of our area is also there for people who would like to talk with one of us about those decisions as well.
With that, I think we're pretty close. We have a couple of things. We have refreshments. We have the door prize. Do you have a preference? You want the food first? Or you want the door prize? Okay. All righty. Where's the box? Oh, there's the box. Okay. Karen, do you want